This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my Coffee with Kenobi original logo mug. Thrilled to be with you this week to talk about, wait for it, the Star Wars book. That's right, the Star Wars book is out. It is out in bookstores, available online. No more pre-orders necessary because the book is out into the world. And as I've been talking about since, February or March, I can finally share some behind the scenes and talk about the content of this incredible book, which I am so proud of. And naturally, if we're going to go to a deep dive for something that is important to Coffee with Kenobi, you have to bring in the A-team. I, of course, am talking about my two best buddies. First, Mr. Cory Clubb, the co-creator of Coffee with Kenobi, #1 designer, and all-around handsome devil.
I love when the plan comes together. It's interesting because we were talking about doing this show, and you said, "Hey, let's talk about the Star Wars book," and you guys can interview me. And that means we have to run the show then. What's going to happen here? So anything can happen tonight, folks. Keep your neckties on and your shoes laced. Anything can happen.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one because just like a couple weeks ago when I talked about something that I didn't have as much experience on, this week I'm actually a guest on my own show. Cory always talks about pour over as we're special guests, even though we're the hosts. This time I'm actually sort of a guest, which is pretty fun.
First time for
everything. But what isn't a first time is our next guest host. He is, of course, no stranger to Coffee with Kenobi, the dapper, the dandy, the CWK newsman with the laugh of gold, Mr. Tom Gross.
Oh, well, what an introduction. And Cory, I just want you to know I have no necktie and I'm wearing my Vans, so no tying of shoes either.
Oh boy, I'm
set. I am set.
Oh.
But yes, as always, great to be on the big show with you guys. It's always been an honor to be included in Coffee with Kenobi, but anytime I can be on and share the mic with the two of you, wow, that's golden. It's gold, Jerry.
That's gold, Jerry. I feel the same way, and I, of course, am wearing Jordans, but that's a show for another time.
Oh, boy.
Yes. All right, guys, so the Star Wars book is out. Of course, I mean, we weren't allowed to talk about a certain amount of things, even to my two best buddies. So now the gloves are off. The coffee is percolating and ready for us to salivate over. Let's talk about this book, and since I'm no longer the host for the next foreseeable future of today's show, I'll just turn the mic over to you two gents.
Fantastic. Well, give me that mic.
Yes.
Matter of fact, I'm going to start with something very simple. You might not know the answer to this, but I'm curious. I've been curious ever since the debut of this edition. It's called The Star Wars Book. And a very simplistic title, very, I want to say unoriginal, but that's just a criticism. Why is it called The Star Wars Book?
That is a great question. That was when I was hired on to be one of the co-writers of this book alongside, and how could I not mention my amazing co-authors, Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton. That was the title that was already in place. And so I smiled because I was getting to write a Star Wars book. So that was it. But when you look at the book, I feel like it makes sense because it's very much an all-encompassing look at the entire saga, not only the movies, but comics, literature, streaming, animated stuff. So I think it's pretty fitting.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting because just knowing the decades and decades of titles that have come out. I know walking through the store, it's something unique. Having transitioned from Lucasfilm to Disney now, obviously, this is kind of the end all be all book, if you will. I mean, title alone gives it that appeal. So, very cool, Tom.
Yeah, I like that aspect. And one thing I want to say about it is in the introduction. I've read the introduction twice now, and for anybody who is just stepping into the Star Wars world or has been sort of a casual fan their entire life, that introduction it's the blueprint for where Star Wars started and how it got to where it is through story, through business, through all levels. So that introduction is really a knockout. And one thing I was going to say about the title of the book is I love the Abbott and Costello potential for you, because when someone says, "Oh, you've written a book. Which book did you write?" And you say, "Well, it's a Star Wars book." And they say, "Yeah, but which one?" You say, "Well, it's the Star Wars book."
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But Dan, really, tell me, which Star Wars book did you read? Yes.
They can never be wrong. The answer can never be wrong.
Oh my goodness. So anyway, I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning for you, and tell us how this project got started, and when did you know that you were involved in this project?
Sure. Well, I was contacted by DK in January, and they asked me to be a part of this book and told me a little bit about what it was about, and then we went from there. And then I got information about basically deadlines and, when we sort of had to have our final draft turned in. And then it became this incredible process because, of course, I've interviewed countless authors over the last 7.5 years really, about books and procedures. And as a teacher of writing and a writer myself, I've always been fascinated by the process. But so to actually see it from this perspective was an unbelievable education that was just almost as thrilling as walking into a bookstore and seeing my book on the shelf.
Wow, that's cool. And so you mentioned your other two authors, Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton. Explain for us, I've never written a book and never been through that process. When you co-author with two others like that, does one of you take the lead, or is it basically like giving out chores in the morning on a Saturday morning with the kids? Well, Dan, you're going to do this, and Pablo, you're going to do this. And is it like that, or is it more collaborative than that? Explain that writing process.
Sure. Well, I mean, basically, we have an amazing editor, Matt Jones, who is basically sort of the visionary for the book, and in my opinion, and just an absolutely wonderful guy. And he had a path about different sections, and we were given certain sections that played to our strengths, in my opinion, and then we just kind of went from there. And it's collaborative to the sense that you're working with. I mean, Pablo and Cole obviously have been writing Star Wars books for a long time. Especially Pablo, you're talking about two of the most respected authors in Star Wars, and so you just sort of have this confidence that they're going to nail it. And you're going to do your best to kind of raise yourself to that bar. And I thought it was a wonderful challenge that I enjoyed every second of.
As I'm currently flipping through this as we speak, I'm astonished about the layout is interesting to me, because most of these articles or character highlights are a two-page spread or just a single page. Like, knowing going into a character or a group of characters, or even covers ships and things here, alien races, what was that like when they say, hey, you're writing about this character or this group of people, and you've got X amount of words to write, right? So it's that putting together. Did they give you kind of an outline of like, okay, we're gonna do like a single page on this person, 2 page on this person, and is that how you kind of took that into effect on writing this, and like taking in key moments and kind of making sure you hit the right key points for certain things? How did that process go when you're kind of handed down the project?
Right. Well, I mean, as you look through the book, you probably notice that there are different sort of layouts. I mean, some features are 1 page, some features are 2 pages, some are 4 pages. I think the longest ones are 4 pages, including the amazing introduction that you talked about, which I didn't write, but I certainly was enthralled by. Absolutely. So that's basically how it worked. Every style has sort of a word count, a specific direction, and then you go from there.
Going into that, talking a little bit about the layout, you knew the word counts and basic lengths.
True.
But many of these articles and essays have infographics, images, something that supports the text. Were you aware of that information as you were writing the text, or did you write and then they they inserted that type of information, those features after the writing.
Sure. Well, no, I knew that every specific layout had specific things that they were looking for, and there were certain, side boxes where you can expand on one specific nuanced character. Like, for example, for Force Sensitives, I was able to focus on Loathwolves, for instance. So, and I knew, basically, it was really wonderful because DK and Disney and Lucasfilm were so awesome, and they completely want, authorial perspective on things. They have certain ideas, but they were always great to say, but if you have a different idea or a different approach, we're open to it, which is very, very empowering, as a creator, as a writer. So I knew I could describe the powers of the characters and really hone in on those specific ones. And then the different boxes, sometimes they were set, sometimes they weren't, and I could make certain pitches about stuff, and they were always super welcome and honest, and they just deferred to all of us to let our sort of our knowledge kind of seep out, and it was super cool. And even we were allowed to, there were suggestions for quotes. They wanted to know what we thought about the quotes. If we had ideas about the images, they were completely open to our suggestions. But it was fun to see what ideas they took and what ideas they kind of took and went in a different direction. It was very exciting.
Speaking of excitement, obviously you're a big Star Wars fan. Getting to this project is kind of a dream come true. I want to know what part of this book, now that you hold it in your hands and can kind of feel it and look through it, what are you most proud of that you were able to accomplish?
I've been thinking about that question since I was working on it, as far as because there's certain things that I learned through this process, because I've always believed, and I'm sure you can back this up, Tom, to really understand something, you have to teach it, or you have to write about it. And Cory, you're a writer too. Mm-hmm. You know exactly what that means and what that entails.
Sure.
So there's a lot of things I'm really proud of. The sections I got to write about, I'm very just sort of in awe that I was asked to be a part of this to help define and discuss things. I mean, I got to write a lot about the Force and the Force powers and a lot of stuff with the Jedi. And I was so honored by that, and I got to really express sort of my, how I've always perceived the Force and midichlorians and things like that, and just sort of put them through my lens, and when you're working with Star Wars experts like Pablo Hidalgo and Lucas from the Lucasfilm team, they're going to help you kind of craft that. So I'm really, really proud of that because I think the Force is the most complex thing. And even the introductions to certain sections that are just all in red, I got to contribute to a lot of those. Very proud of that. And we may talk about later, but there's one section that made me appreciate a specific character even more, which I'm sure we'll get to.
So talking about what's most proud, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit and ask you, in approaching this project, what became the biggest challenge for you? What was the biggest hurdle you had to get over in order to either get started, to finish, or to keep your engines rolling throughout the process? Because it's you mentioned January, and so this is something that you've been working on for a long time. What was the biggest challenge?
I mean, honestly, fortunately I've been written a lot of blogs over the years for StarWars.com, so I sort of have an understanding of how things work as far as what they are comfortable with, what they want, and what they discourage you maybe just sort of avoid. So the starting part was pretty straightforward, and I love writing. I mean, there are some long days. I'm talking there's some 8, 9, 10-hour days, especially on the weekends. To hit the deadlines that I wanted to hit, I had to write basically every night. So the hardest thing for me, it wasn't really the book itself. It was the fact that the rest of my life did not stop. I was still, and am still, fortunately, a husband, a father, a teacher. I host a weekly Star Wars podcast, and I still have to do social media and advertising and all those things. So all other parts of my life didn't stop. They just continued as normal. And then you add on to that the fact that I'm writing a book where there's a deadline and I have to meet a certain amount. And I've been working with this a really, really long time. And I wanted to be professional, which of course I was. And I wanted to make sure I hit that deadline and got to it earlier than I was supposed to, which I did. So the most challenging part of it for me was just making sure to find time, which I don't really have, and make it work and still give my absolute best, because it's very important to me. I mean, everything I do, I try to give my very best, because otherwise, what's the point? And thank goodness I've got such an amazing spouse and understanding family that gave me that time, that gave me those opportunities 100% selflessly. And that, thank goodness for that, because otherwise it doesn't happen.
In speaking of Star Wars, I know the biggest debate sometimes can be what's canon, what's not canon. And as I flip through this, I mean, I'm looking at timelines, looking at quotes, looking at characters young and old, and it's just like there's so much in depth here. Do you ever come to a point where you felt overwhelmed? You thought that you kind of put the spin on this, because this is something that fans are going to be glossing over and kind of reading through over and over and saying, well, wait a minute, I thought it was this way and now it's this way. And is there an innate ability to have a fear there, to kind of know that you're pushing this fandom and this I don't know, how do I say, the force and these characters in the future? I mean, honestly, this contributes to what we believe is currently in the community of Star Wars and moving ahead.
That's a wonderful question, and I guess the simple answer is, there were maybe a couple of times, maybe less than a handful of times, where I thought, wow, this is really going to be scrutinized. And literally within the same breath, I thought, great, let it be scrutinized. I'm confident in what I know. I'm confident in my writing. And I believe that I understand this saga, and I'm going to learn about this saga through working with Lucasfilm. And the fact that they trusted me with this incredible responsibility is just so humbling, and one of the most incredible blessings I could ever fathom. I mean, if you would have told me back in 1982 when I was reading the Jedi Master's Quiz book by Rusty Miller,
right,
that I was going to get to write a Star Wars book and contribute to this story, to this mythology, wow. And just like with all things, I feel like everything I do, I try to give my best and prepare myself for things to happen. So when things happen, I'm going to quote Lou Piniella, former manager of many teams, including our Chicago Cubs: "Pressure is for people who aren't prepared." I was prepared because I've been through the trenches for a very long time. So I was not going to let fear or any kind of worries about how things may or may not be perceived stand in my way, because honestly, I can't control that. All I can do is sit in front of my computer and write and pour out my love of Star Wars. And the fact that, I mean, this is a much wordier book than most DK books, because there are a series of curated essays, and that's how it was explained to me. You're going to write a lot of essays about Star Wars. And I said to my wife, I just got goosebumps again, you guys. I said, this is the book I was born to write, because I get to analyze Star Wars.
Yeah.
And that's what I do all the time. Mm-hmm. So I get to actually put it out on paper, and golly, it's just so wonderful. I mean, God is good. What can I say?
You've really caused a challenge for me as a librarian, because traditionally in my library, I put a little orange panther paw in my DK books, because that makes it easier for kids who just want to find a book to just look at the pictures. Mm-hmm. I can't do that on this DK book. There's way too much text.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, though, my friend. And I love that aspect of the book. So I'm going to follow up a little bit on what you said in your last answer. And you said something about, learning about Star Wars. So I wanted to ask, tell us, what did you learn about Star Wars because as you said, in 1982, you're doing the quiz book. You've had a podcast for so many years. You've watched and analyzed the books and the movies and the animated shows. What possibly more could Dan Zayer know about Star Wars? But now that you've written the book, the Star Wars book, what did you learn about Star Wars?
I love it. I learned a lot about Star Wars. I mean, the stuff about the Force and Force powers and sort of how it works. And sometimes, as we've said, the act of writing makes you think about things very differently and process things differently. So there was certainly a lot of that. But if I could, and there's a lot of things that I've learned, but the main thing that stands out to me is the incredible amount of respect and awe I have for Leia Organa. Like, that blew me away more than anything. I think I took more time writing that than maybe the first entry that I wrote, which, by the way, the very first entry I wrote for this book was Obi-Wan Kenobi. How about that? And that was not even planned. It just sort of happened. I mean, Coffee with
awesome.
It's amazing. Yeah, I couldn't wait to tell you guys that, actually. But writing about Leia and her strength and the incredible amount of stuff, and there's a lot of great stuff about it, and the fact that I could go into the Claudia Gray novels and into Rebels and comic books and just sort of really go through the gamut of her incredible, impressive mythology and her incredible, insane amount of strength and resilience and tenacity and an absolute refusal to give up on her dreams was very inspiring to me. And I do take a lot of that in my daily life, that notion as well. And so that, I think my just deep, sincere appreciation for her and learning more the nuance of the extended amount of mythology that's out there in the canonical Star Wars universe and being able to incorporate that was something really impressive that I learned. I also learned a lot about sort of the underworld and different beasts in Star Wars too that I hadn't really thought about before, so that was really fun. But Leia would be the top.
Cory, if you don't mind, I'm going to follow up real quick.
Sure.
Tell us about the research, because obviously, we view the movies, we view the story, we read the story, but what kind of research goes into a book like this? You mentioned you went to Claudia Gray's novels and whatnot, but what's so? What am I trying to say here? Besides just the texts, did you do interviews? Did you talk to each other in regards to Cole and Pablo to clarify things? What's the extent of the research that went into this book on your side?
Sure. I mean, well, I had access to some of the biggest Star Wars experts in the world, so we could talk, we could email each other and discuss that kind of stuff and bounce ideas off of each other. And honestly, Matt, our editor, is one of the most knowledgeable Star Wars people that I've ever known or talked to in my life. I mean, he knows this stuff backwards and forwards, probably better than even I do. I have no doubt about that. And so to be able to talk to him about that, or be able to know that, I'm writing a book with Pablo and Cole, who know so much about Star Wars anyway. Plus, there's a lot of great stuff on the net. I have a ton, as you can see, or people know, from the Facebook Live stuff. I have a ton of books that I could reference. I mean, DK has a lot of other stuff. The novelizations of the movies are great resources. The movies themselves, while I was writing this, I was rewatching Rebels with Mason anyway. So that served really, really beautifully. And then, as if we need another excuse to watch The Mandalorian again. I mean, just being able, basically, let's think about this. I was basically doing the things that I do anyway, but now I'm putting it down on a piece of paper, or not on a piece of paper with my papyrus. But no, just being able to kind of get it through there. Yes. So it basically also just going through my brain, the recesses of my mind, and thinking about this stuff. And I never made outlines. I just sat down and I knew I had a word count, and I just wrote what felt the most organic to me. Because we haven't talked about this yet, but other Star Wars books, is people said, what makes this book different? And maybe I'm taking one of your questions. But the thing that makes this book different to me is that this book is the how and the why. I feel like most books are the what. What is it? What does it do? But to me, this is the how it all works and why it all works. It's much more of an analytical approach, which is how I like to enjoy and sort of ingest my entertainment anyway. So that was sort of a filter for me.
Yeah, you mentioned you wrote about Leia and Obi-Wan. I'm curious, we think back to 1977 and when it all started and to today, when, new stuff coming our way. What is the oldest thing you got to write about? You mentioned the Force, but I mean, in the sense of filmography and just knowing all the different types of media and such. But what's the oldest thing would you say you got to write about?
Oldest as far as like when it was made, or like canonically oldest?
I guess canonically, in the sense of when it debuted.
That's a good question. I mean, probably just the original movie, I would say, and some of the characters in that. I mean, Yoda's older than that, but I got to write about Yoda too, and which is pretty awesome. And so probably just in that wheelhouse, the OT characters that we know and love so well.
So then,
well, no, that's not true. There was some Clone Wars stuff in there too. So I guess there's some Clone Wars stuff. I was able to sort of dive into different areas of things that I found the most interesting, which is great. It's so weird, by the way, to sit on this side of the microphone. This is so weird. Like, I'm just thinking about, now I sort of see what authors think when they're being asked questions, and that's really fascinating.
Well, it's interesting to think, too, and I think we'll take a break after this. I think we have to take a break, but...
Look at you being a host.
Just trying to do my thing. This is interesting to talk to you, Dan, about this, because, like you said, the flip side of things... It makes me come with a different mindset. It makes me, rather than just talking about Star Wars as, a peer. I mean, we are peers, but in the sense of you've really kind of enriched it for us as fans, and we can see your side of things. And I always tend to, for myself, we get to meet celebrities that have been to films, or you say authors and, artists and whatnot across the catalog of Star Wars. But, there's everyday people like yourself. They're doing their thing. They have day jobs, they have families, they have lives, and Star Wars is still just one of their, hobbies, their labors of love. And so kudos to you for putting it such, simplest terms in the fact that you sat down and went to work. It wasn't laborious. It was the fact that it was a passion. So very cool. I like that.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate that, and it's a labor of love, and I mean, you, of course, both of you guys have always been so encouraging and empowering, and I will never forget telling you both separately for the first time about this book, and it was a very special time. I got to tell you at work. We got to talk about we had like in that private library room, and I got to tell you about it, and your reaction was just amazing and priceless, and then. I happened to be recording with Cory for something, and the day it came out on Amazon, I had known for like 2 weeks it was going to show up on Amazon.
That's
so
right.
I don't know how many times I refreshed, but I probably set a Guinness record. So then I said, all right,
Cory,
Cory,
so many hits.
I want you to type in these words, the Star Wars book, on Amazon. So we did, and so you and I got to share that moment together virtually, but to experience that with the two of you, I mean, really, that's the way that it should be anyway. And so that was very special for me. So I appreciate you guys being along for the ride, because it's really awesome.
Well, here we are talking to Dan Z. Dan Zayer, thank you very much. One of the authors of the Star Wars book. We're talking about him. We'll take a short break and be right back after this.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
MEI and Mouse Fan Travel is your one-stop shop for your vacation needs and your plans to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or the cruise lines. Travel looks much different now than it did a couple of months ago, and with the opening of Walt Disney World and soon, hopefully, the opening of Disneyland, you need a place to go where you can trust, and they will help you figure out and navigate all the different circumstances and guidelines that Disney has put out for you. And I can say that we had our vacation modified, and as soon as dates were announced, MEI contacted me directly to help me reschedule, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. So if you are interested in rescheduling your vacation or want to try to plan a Walt Disney World, Disneyland vacation, or anywhere else you want to go on the planet, be sure to contact MEI and Mouse Fan Travel at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help you maximize your vacation time and dollar, and they will help you figure out all the different changes and modifications going on at the Disney theme parks. They are amazing, and I can tell you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, the peace of mind that Becky Mencken and the crew at MEI and Mouse Fan Travel have given me is invaluable. If you're interested at all, again, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel.
Welcome back to Coffee with Kenobi. Thanks for taking a break with us. We are definitely excited to talk more about the Star Wars book. If you guys have not ordered this yet, it is flying off the shelves. I was scrolling through my news feed just yesterday, and I saw nothing but blue books go by. People were holding them up. I'm serious. I'm not joking. Like, really, Facebook, Twitter, it was everywhere. Everybody's ordering it. Everybody's got it online. Here's what I got in the mail today. And us being in the situation of being quarantined or and this lack of internet information. I want to go shake your hand. I want to say hello, and it's exciting to see so many people back this up and get excited about this stuff, because I know for an author, it's a long process, and to finally hold that book in your hands, wow, that's a moment. I'm gonna kick this session off with that question. What was it like to hold this book?
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing that up. There is nothing quite like seeing your timeline, and in the CWK Cafe, our wonderful Facebook group with this amazing Star Wars community that we have, seeing everyone there and on other social media outlets posting pictures with the book, and David Nicely posting a picture of himself reading it with, I think he was wearing a Death Trooper helmet, I believe.
Death Trooper helmet, yeah.
Just so powerful, Mary took a picture at Books A Million of how many there were. It's just so awesome. The incredible support and love that you all have shown me is just something I will treasure forever. As far as when I first saw the book, I got to see a PDF, as I said, quite a bit before it came out. But I knew that they were going to send me an author copy. And so I because of UPS, I get like updates on my phone when packages are coming anyway. But I saw the update on my phone that I was getting, a package from DK, and I was so excited. And then so I got the box and had this big pink sticker on it that says the date about when the book goes on sale. So I waited. I knew what it was, so I waited till Deanna got home, and Mason was there, and the other older boys were gone, and so I opened it up, and we just opened it together, and I just held it in my hands. I didn't open it, and I just looked at it. I feel like I'm going to get emotional, but I just looked at it, and I just felt this weird sense of calm and joy, like peace and purpose, like Luke. But I didn't die and disappear, fortunately. And
good, you're still here.
Yes, and it was just sort of it's sort of hard to explain, but people say, how do you feel that you wrote this book, that you contributed to this mythology? I say, it feels surreal, but it also feels like exactly where I'm supposed to be and exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It's very much a paradoxical thing. So that went through my mind. I was smiling so huge. I probably looked like I was a game show host. And then my wife and Mason and I made a circle and hugged, and we all said a prayer together. And it was just, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. But it was wonderful because that happened because of my family and because they always believe in me and push me, and to be my best and to do my best and to make a fertile life for myself where opportunities can grow. And it was just very, very, very special. So I'm going to get the tissues out, you guys. I mean, seriously, that is so great. All right, so I'm going to take a page out of our pour overs here. But I'm gonna give it to you first, okay. So you guys have a second to think about it. But I have a question I'll ask you, Dan, that might lead to it. The question. So, okay. But each one of us is going to give our like initial. I mean, obviously I've had it for less than 24 hours, or maybe I've just had it at 24 hours now. But what is your favorite part of the book at this point? And my question to you, Dan, is, I saw that picture of you yesterday at Barnes & Noble, and you had the book open, you're looking at it. Is there a particular page that you like to open to, and it's kind of like, yes, okay, it's still there? Honestly, yes.
Like, is there a part of the book that's like that for you? And maybe that'll be your favorite part, or maybe it won't. But so it's kind of a two-part question there for you.
I'm not sure what my favorite part is, but the part that I was looking at in that picture that you're referring to, it's on all of our social media, is the picture, the one of the first pages that has contributor. I mentally pinch myself all the time that I read Pablo Hidalgo, Cole Horton, Dan Zare. I keep looking at that and looking at that profile, and it's just so staggering to me. I mean, I don't know how many times I've looked at that. I know what it says, but just knowing that it's there and it hasn't gone away. It hasn't magically been erased from the universe. And I don't think that it will, of course, but it's just really, really special. And then I flip through to the parts, that I wrote, but I also like to look at what the other guys wrote, and it's really cool. But yeah, it's definitely that. And I don't mean that from a place of hubris. I mean it from a place of, wow, I'm so blessed. I can't believe this happened. and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy every second of it.
There's a part of me, and then Cory, I'll let you give your favorite and I'll give mine, but there's a part of me that kind of wishes I could look at this book through your filter to see and it's not because I'm trying to compare anything. It just would be cool to see like, oh, Dan wrote that over there, and then I turn the page and then I know that this is like Cole's writing here, and then I see Pablo's writing here, and just to see the filter of that, and then also the layers of like editing to see like what did an original PDF look like versus once final images were added and then the edits were put in and then all of that. I mean, I'm sure when you look at this book, you see all of those like different filters. I always thought it'd be cool to be able to see that side of it. And there are some books that have those like transparent pages where you flip it and it shows you a little bit of, what I'm talking about. And I'm always fascinated by those. So I can only imagine what your eyeballs see that mine don't on this. But so Cory, what is a favorite part or initial reaction to this book?
It's funny because I didn't know what to expect, and playing along at home, I'm a huge Mandalorian fan, and so I was flipping through and I started reading the introduction. I thought, no, I can go to any page I want. So I flipped back to the front or the front glossary. Glossary with glossaries in the back. What am I talking about? The front index. Table of contents. Thank you. I know what a book looks like. And I went right to page 202, folks. If you're following along at home, is the page for Din Djarin, the Mandalorian. And I thought, I wonder if I can read something I don't know about him. And lo and behold, there was little bits and pieces that I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, because I think as a fan, you always kind of have some knowledge in your head, and it's always like your working canon knowledge until you sit down and go, okay, let's really put the facts together here and read about this character or this being and kind of collaborate and see what matches up. And it all matched up because I've seen the trailer, or I've seen the season 1. So it's cool to relive that through this character because I like the character so much and it gets me excited for what's to come. That's what I think about the future of things. So I was excited about Mandalorian, but also I'm excited to go back through this and read about, I think sometimes it's hard to keep things in structure in my head. Like, oh, when did this happen? Oh, this person was there. And, Clone Wars to The Last Jedi to, everything in between, in the sense of the fact that, there's so much going on and trying to keep it corrected. This is one of those type of books for me. I think it's cool to go back and see that and see where it all lines up. So that among the new things I'll discover. You mentioned that before. The previous conversation was just learning the new things about Star Wars I don't know or have forgotten about.
You know what? Mine is very similar to that, Cory, and I didn't know what to expect when I got this either. I was surprised when Dan you showed some initial pictures of of your copy that you got before everyone else, and I was surprised for a DK book at the size of it. Mm-hmm. There's only one other book that I have in my library anyway that is a DK book that's of similar size, and that's one that didn't come out too terribly long ago, and that's the Marvel book, and has a similar size. So when I saw it, I was like, ooh, this is going to be something like that, maybe. And then
there's a Star Trek one too, by the way.
What's that called? Star Trek.
The Star Trek book, yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is.
We'll make a warp speed joke later.
Check your Klingons.
Yeah.
So anyway, now you guys got me all flustered, and I'm trying to get back on track. Okay, you bring up Star Trek, and I'm way over. Okay, anyway. What my favorite part is, Cory, you mentioned like finding stuff that's new. What I've enjoyed so far in going through this book is seeing things that are new and how they are woven in with the mythology that I already know. For example, there was some part I was reading, it's early in the book, I think it was in the part in the galaxy, where the Colossus comes up and how the Colossus sat in, I forget now, you're going to correct me, Dan, if it's set in a planet that's in the unknown regions or just in the outer rim, but just seeing the mention of the Colossus, and I'm like, oh, I've seen those shows, and I know what the Colossus is, and all that, and I don't know, that seems like such a silly thing to say, but to watch Resistance as an animated show seems, even though it makes ties into the films and its characters I know, and Poe Dameron and BB-8 are there, it still seems like kind of a separate piece of the galaxy. But to see it all come together in this place, and it's the same way with The Mandalorian, because Cory, I was like you, I went to pages, I instantly went to page 200 and read 200 through 204. That was almost the first thing I read when I looked at this, because we're only 2 weeks away from season 2, and so I wanted to see, is there something that I missed at the beginning? Is there something that maybe is going to be hinted here? And I'm not looking for spoilers, but I mean, are there little pieces? And like, for example, on page 201, where it's talking about the Keepers of the Way, there's that little side box that, Dan, you were talking about, where you get to take one aspect and break it down. And it was so cool to sort of see the path of the Darksaber and where it started and where it came from. And it's almost like watching the path of who owned the Millennium Falcon. I mean, the Darksaber has a mythology of its own as far as who has touched that saber. And so it's kind of cool, and it gives it just enriches the story. And when Moff Gideon, I'm assuming, in season 2 is going to have this, we're going to have like a rich history to that. And that's what a book like this does. And that's my favorite part so far, is seeing how it all weaves together and all the little pieces here and there, how it all comes together.
I feel like one thing that it does, and thank you both for your insights into that. I feel like what this book does is it does contextualize everything in the mythology, and you don't feel like, oh, this is a movie thing, this is an anime thing, this is a comic book, this is literature. No, it's a one story. And that's, I feel like, one thing that we were able to do, the three of us, was, and Matt, the editor, was to combine it and create just a sort of literally a canvas where, not literally, but figuratively a canvas where it's one story. Because it is one story. It's one big, massive story. A lot of cooks have gone into this recipe, and they made it in such a way that there's a rhythm to it. There's a beauty to it. And, Cory, something you had mentioned earlier, what I love about reading this book is there are legitimately times where I'll think, did I write that? Did Cole write that? And you can't remember because it blends together. And I feel like the three of us have sort of a similar style. I mean, I certainly give myself a huge pat on the back to think I could write as well as those two. But there's like sort of a rhythm to writing. I think there's a texture, if you will, to writing. It's sort of a melody in and of itself. When I'm writing, I feel like I'm almost hearing sort of a different kind of a music. And I feel like the three of us kind of blended together so well that it doesn't even seem to really matter who wrote it, because it all is about one story that we've tried to tie together.
It's still not going to stop me from texting you from time to time to say, did you write this part?
You can. Anytime. Sure.
And so far, I'm 0 for 1 here in guessing. But that is the beauty of it, is the way you all come together. And I remember I interviewed Cole for his book with Liz Heineke, the
Maker Lab.
And the Maker Lab, and I remember talking to him about like what was his role in that, because Liz is sort of the craft person. She's the one that develops all of that. Not to say that Cole didn't do that, but Cole's strong point that he talked about was, he's the history guy. He is, he has a history degree, and so he knows the story and the mythology of Star Wars, and so he writes from that perspective. And so, and all three of you, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm oversimplifying here, I realize, but I'm looking at just the three of you, and I think of it as like a dream team of authors, because he's like the history teacher, Star Wars person. He's an insider, and then you've got Pablo, who is like, talk about an insider with Star Wars, and then we've got you, who obviously can write. I mean, you have that's never been a question, and you're a teacher, and so how to communicate things in a process or in learning and metacognition, and then you're on top of that a fan, and all three of you are fans of Star Wars, and so it comes together really well. And when I'm reading through this, I can feel that. that love and passion for the story, that love and passion for what the story means to us. And like you said, it's the how and the why of Star Wars. So I'm gonna ask a question here, and I don't mean any disrespect if it comes off this way, but is it safe to say when I in the parts that I've read of this, one thought came to mind, and you can discount me here, or you can tell me that, hey, this is kind of what we were thinking, is if I were to teach a class on Star Wars, this would be my textbook.
Yeah.
What is your response to that as one of the writers of this book? Does that make sense?
It does. I feel like, I was talking to a friend of ours today, Dave Crostel, and he said, this book is so dense. Like, there's so much. It's so detailed and analytical, and it's really impressive. And I feel like this is not a mythology textbook, but to me, it's sort of a Star Wars mythology textbook because it explores and attempts to explain things that either have been explained sort of ambiguously or not directly, or through a piece of dialogue somewhere in the Star Wars universe. So I totally get that, and I'm actually grateful that you feel that way, because that, when I look at it and I read through it, I think, wow, this is like this. There's a reason it's called the Star Wars book, and I'm not just saying that because I worked on it. It's more like this is something that I, as a fan and someone who wants to understand this universe and analyze it and break it down, like I think Cory, you and I were talking about, this is going to like be a conversation starter. It could be a conversation stopper. It's certainly going to percolate and make people think about things. I've been promising for months on Facebook Live that this book is going to answer a lot of your questions and create even more of them. And to me, that's my favorite thing about Star Wars anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting too that like I'm just flipping through this and like I'm actually engrossed in this. This is something. I was trying to think like, man, is there anything else that as in the Star Wars realm of books that have this much information in it? And I can't think of anything. I mean, I can think of the old DK books of like, which the big format ones that have like the pictures, like you mentioned, Tom, and they're just not. It's not like this. This is something completely different. And you mentioned the quiz book at the top of the show there, Dan, and I think this is this generation's quiz book, if you will, right? I mean, I feel like this is kind of that thing where if you're looking for something Star Wars, you were kind of in this shift of like waiting for new movies to come out, feature films, and we have The Mandalorian, and we've got some more things coming out, but this is what we need right now. I honestly think that like this is something that like if you're a Star Wars fan coming in for the first time, this is a great textbook. I think it's a great term for it, for Star Wars fans and for old Star Wars fans to kind of brush up on stuff. And I'm trying to think like, is there anything on here that's not covered, that is not included or is skipped over or something? And I can't, as I'm thinking through it, I don't think so. Dan, do you have like any knowledge around like something that like you guys were trying to maybe shy away from as you wrote this, or was it all like, hey, we're going to cover everything, and within 200 plus pages, we're going to do it all?
Right. No, to me, I feel like our job was to try to accurately explore all aspects of Star Wars. In my mind, at least when I was writing it, in my mind, I was trying to incorporate as much as I possibly could that I knew about. And I thought it was sort of ironic, all these years of reviews and discussions and breakdowns of all kinds of things. I thought, wow, all this is like, I've got this in my brain somewhere, and I can actually kind of go through the file cabinet of my brain, and it's actually worth something. It actually is benefiting me to remember and have done so much with Star Wars as I have, because I can put it into the book. And I took, as I said, I took great joy and happiness in being able to honor all the authors and different creators of this franchise, and most importantly, George, of course, and be able to put that back in. I mean, to me, it was sort of like a love letter to everything I love about Star Wars, and I love just about everything in Star Wars. And even the parts that I don't like, I could write about it and appreciate it in a different way because I was looking at it from a different perspective.
how often were you working on one of these essays that you thought, if I could just have another page?
That only happened twice, really, and I feel like that was good because I mean, like I said, when you teach writing for a living and you emphasize page count and things like that, and I've been trying to teach students for over a decade that, say what you need to say, but say it succinctly. Say it specifically. Give as much detail as you can, but get to the point. So, and I feel like that's a great challenge. I tell students all the time, it's easy to add. It's really, really hard to take things out. And that probably the majority of my editing in my writing, when there were ever parts where I feel like it got a little bit slower, is because I had to take things out. But what do you take out? When you're talking about Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, I mean, what do you take out from that massive, massive history, while also being clear to not overstate things that have been said a million times? I mean, that's another key aspect of this, right? I mean, I wanted to make it a fresh look at some things that have been talked about for over 40 years, and that can be daunting, but it's also this wonderful, wonderful challenge that I very much savored.
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, this is a testament to, I think, your hard work. I know, Dan, when you and I first started the podcast, I think one of the first things we talked about having was polo shirts with our logo on them.
Yeah.
And I think James Arnold Taylor was like the dream guest or something like that. And along the way, it was just like it was kind of like just a shot in the dark. Oh, we'll give this thing a shot. We'll just try this. And here I am holding a book that you wrote. Like, I'm not saying the podcast did that, but I'm saying, like, it's fascinating to see the trajectory of your fandom merge with your professionalism. And it's just, I mean, kudos to you and hats off to you, because this is kind of like, okay, well, turn the lights off before you leave because it's over. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
No, I know what you mean.
But before they cast you in the next movie, let me know. But this is quite an achievement, I think, and this is awesome. I think the fact that all your love's kind of poured into one here, and I always kind of felt like, oh, you wrote articles here, articles there, and it was just kind of like, oh, you'll write a book eventually, but I didn't think this book. Honestly, I thought it would be something, I contributed, a couple things to this thing. But this book, I think is very special for the Star Wars fandom. And so I think it's just really cool to see and have you talk about it and whatnot. But that's all the questions I have. Tom, do you have anything else you want to wrap up with? And Dan, if you have any more little, tips or tricks or experiences you want to expound upon, please do.
Well, I just want to say thank you, man. That means so much to me. It's so cool to hear you say it. And I remember sitting at that restaurant up over here on the road. I'm pointing as if people can see what I'm talking about. Michael's was the name of the restaurant, and I brought a notebook, which I still have, and with the notes I still have about goals and what we wanted to accomplish. And I never for a second put a limit. After I went to the solo premiere and I met George Lucas, my oldest, Peyton, said, well, you've met George Lucas, you've been to premiere, that's pretty much it. I mean, where else is there to go? And he meant it, like, honestly. And, and I think about this, and, to me, I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of what I want to do. I'm so hungry and passionate about this. And I think a key to all of this, I mean, of course, Coffee with Kenobi was a help. I mean, how could it not be? I mean, because it's all about hard work and perseverance and following your dreams and your passions without ceasing. And you still take healthy breaks. You still make sure to make a healthy balance, a buffet of life. There's so many wonderful things out there. But to focus on what you can't control, what you have to offer, what is good in the world, and put it out there. I truly believe that the more you put out, the more you get back. The more you put in this world to try to build people up and make things better. And that's who I am anyway. I feel like you have to be unabashedly yourself. Never, ever, ever give up on what you want. And, create the life that you want to live. And that's what I want to do.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. It is a lot of fun and you'll make some new friends as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. A big thank you to our CWK Alliance members, Mary Perdue, Jason Hall, Dennis Keithley, Ross Hollowin, Cato McNichol, Alexander Moylan, Jim Capron, Smooth Rivera, Tyler Pompa, Frank Mulder, Colby Mead, LJ Souter, Daz Davies, Dustin Mills, Robert Avila, Terry King, Jeff Ellis, David Nicely, Chris Gavarka, Angela Sauce, Aaron Harris, Greg McLaughlin, Eric Struthers, Christine Turk, Brian McKinney, Alex Procasio, Hannah, Susan Gray, Ian Thompson, Dan Ream, Christian Dale, JC Poe, Ed Kimoto, Blake Weaver, Chelsea Sansbury, Yancey Evans, Craig Hargrove, Chris Metz, Connie Shee, Mark Suter, Jared Cantor, Kurt McKellen, Thea Selby, and Simbat Defterdarian. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Cory Clubb. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, live video, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, please feel free to reach out to me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. There are also a lot of ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and check us out on Pinterest. You can find me twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, and you can find my writing on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I'm an official blogger there, as well as on IGN, where I contribute articles on Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. And if you're considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and help you make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I'm also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. You can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our CWK sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. And don't forget to pre-order my brand new book that I wrote alongside Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, The Star Wars Book, published by DK. Be sure to pre-order your copy of the Star Wars book today. I can't wait to share it with each and every one of you. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word. Go to iTunes and search Coffee with Kenobi and you'll see the show there. My circle of friends has grown so much because of this podcast and each and every one of you, and it means so much to me that we have such a wonderful Star Wars community. Thank you all so much for all you do.
Well said. well said. I love there's these last like 3 minutes are always what I love sitting in on the conversation. Sure. I feel like when people say, man, if I could be the fly on the wall, ladies and gentlemen, I am the fly on the wall because
don't worry about the time either. I know the guy who runs the show. He'll let you go a little bit more.
And so are all of us, because that's a conversation between the two of you. You guys have a long history, and you built this podcast from the ground up. And it's just neat to hear the two of you kind of reminisce about the past and talk about like building up to where we are today and the different paths that we've taken and in and out and all of that kind of thing. I just love that part. And I am so thankful to be with both of you and as part of all of this.
Amen. I just want to say really quickly that I still believe that I am not at this point without Cory Clubb. Without you and I together coming up with this plan, the way we work together and collaborate on designs and ideas and creating this community that has grown far beyond my wildest dreams is something that I'm grateful for, because you've always been one of my most important and impactful muses. When you decided to turn off the mic, and you gave me a book about basically growing your brand and growing your online presence. And you said some things about that were very special and personal, but it was essentially a belief in me. And I have that belief in myself. But to get that affirmation from somebody that I respect so much is great. And Tom, I'm going to say something nice about you later too, so sit tight.
I was just sitting here with my coffee cup, raising it, going, cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Well, thanks. I did go through this text, this book, and I didn't see my name in here, but that's okay.
Wait. You're a Yoda species, the Cory Clubbus.
Oh, I'm
Cory Clubbus.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been quite a journey, I think, doing all this, and like you mentioned too, it's not like I've reached a moment. I can retire and sit, turn the mic off, or I can slow down. I think it's almost like just enjoy it now. This is your enjoyment period season of like, hey, I've accomplished something, and kind of bathe in that, if you will, and just enjoy it for the fact that people have questions and Tom's texting you about, did you write that? And just knowing that contribute to the larger piece of fandom. So I think that's cool. I think it's really cool, and I can't wait to get your action figure. So I think that's what's coming next. So
with Kung Fu grip.
Oh my goodness. It's amazing. I'm sitting here. Cory, we're sitting here talking to author Dan Zehr of the Star Wars book. And how cool is that? So my final question to you, Dan, and it's probably one that you can say, Tom, I can't tell you that. You got to read the book. But I want to ask this because I do know, or I suspect, I don't know that I know this, but I suspect this, that as we start digging through this book, I know in just a few hours of reading it today, there are lots of things I came across where I was like, really? I didn't know that. And so I know that there's a lot that I don't know. Sometimes the best thing is not knowing what you don't know. But I know that there's some new ideas in here. Mm-hmm. Or I suspect there are. And so I know you're going to tell me, Tom, just read the book and you'll find them. But I'm wondering if you can give us a clue as to something new that shows up into this book. Entice us, tease us. You don't have to give us a page number or a paragraph or line number.
That's good.
Where should we head to? Now, I read the introduction and I flipped through it and I see at the end it says how to use this book and all of this. But I want you to give us an extra, like the extra track at the end of a CD. Mm-hmm. I want you to give us a little clue as to where listeners for Coffee at Kenobi, where can we go to find maybe a new or new-ish idea in the Star Wars saga?
Yes. Well, honestly, I believe that there's a lot of nuggets in there. I think every page has some great stuff, that's some interesting stuff. But I feel like what this book does very uniquely is it gives you a different way to look at things that you think you're very familiar with. Mm-hmm. And it makes you think about things, and it fosters there's a rhetorical style in here that I'm very blessed to be a part of that forces you to look at things differently and to think about connections, or maybe to think about things that actually aren't connected at all. And that's probably just as important as anything. And the fact that there's still much unexplored with The Mandalorian, with the High Republic, that we haven't even gotten to experience yet. Different ways to look at events and moments in Rebels, or maybe it's going to have you thinking about Rey and her journey in a way that you hadn't expected to before. I was really excited to read the section on Palpatine. I think there's a lot. I think we know a lot. There's a lot we don't know, and yet there's still much more that we have yet to scratch the surface of.
I hear Alec Guinness's voice next to me saying, "Read the book, Tom." And you know what? I will. I will finish my training on Dagobah, and I will read the Star Wars book, and I will experience all of this. This has been so much fun. And Dan, we're so proud of you. I mean, there's no simpler way to put it. We are so proud of all of the work that you put in. And I can't imagine, your clock has 28 hours a day. I don't know. I honestly don't know how you do it. You know, so many times you're like, you just do it. You just make it happen. And I know you do. And I'm just like, that's amazing. That is unbelievable. The focus that you have. And I can't tell you how proud I am. And I can't wait for my nephew on Christmas morning to open up this book. And for me, and I'll be excited for him because it's a Star Wars book, but I'm excited to kind of show off to my family and say, open to that front there. You see that author there? That Dan's it? Yep. He's my buddy. He's my friend. And so I just super proud of you and the amazing accomplishment and the contribution you've made to this amazing community of Star Wars fans. So thank you for all of that. And what a great conversation this has been.
Thank you so much, Tom. And you were the first person to write a formal review of this book. Oh. And it was you would talk to me about, is it okay if I'm just honest? I'm like, of course. I want you to be honest. I want you to be critical. Just do your thing. And you did. It was very rewarding for me. I mean, just I told you, I warned you I was going to say something nice about you, so buckle up. But you've always been a wonderful cheerleader for me as well. And when Cory left the show, I knew I was going to go it solo, but I knew that I wanted to add a new angle to the show. I knew your background as a professional radio personality and just your love of research, and you're just one of the best presenters I've ever seen in my life. So the fact that I get to have access to that and hear your great laugh and how much joy that you have helped to contribute to the community too is very, very special. So I'm very, very grateful that I get to share it not only with the awesome Cory Clubb, but also you as well, my friend. So thank you very much. And honestly, it was so cathartic to talk about this stuff. My wife doesn't care about this stuff.
Yeah, right.
But she cares about me in this process, and she's been so wonderful and just amazing. And all of you really are just, I'm so lucky. I mean, I'm very fortunate to write this Star Wars book, but I'm very, very lucky that I have people to share it with, like the two of you and my family. And thank goodness for that. And thank you so much to everybody listening, both in the CWK Alliance and the CWK Cafe, who join us on Facebook Live every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central. And, of course, the thousands and thousands of you that listen to Coffee with Kenobi each and every week. You've helped to make this very, very special for me, and I hope that the Star Wars book will bring you even more to add to your collective Star Wars conversations.
Well, folks, if you're listening here and you have not ordered or picked up this book, it's in the bookstores everywhere. It's online. If you don't have it, it makes a great Christmas gift, holiday gift. You're coming up here pretty soon. That's the thing too. Is usually my kids read DK books, but this is mine. I'm keeping this one for sure. But it's for everybody. So get out there and grab a book and take a look. So. Thanks for coming on the show, Dan, as a guest.
It's really nice. Really nice to be here.
Where can people get a hold of you? If they've got this book and they want to ask a question, where can they get a hold of you?
Sure. I think Twitter is, of course, a great way at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. You can certainly send me an email, danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Boy, it is weird to say this on Coffee with Kenobi. That is so weird.
Well, that does it for this episode of Coffee with Kenobi. Thank you for listening in. I appreciate you guys for checking us out this week. Take care, and may the Force be with you.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one